Hello, hello, welcome. How's it going, Laura?
Going good, thank you. I was really worried about what to say then. I was like, oh, I'm so excited to be here. And then it just kind of came out. It's good, thank you. So it's 7 p.m. where I am. So it's the end of my week. It's Friday night. And what better way to spend it than hanging out with you guys here? Hi, everyone.
Yeah, well, hey. Let me give you a proper introduction. I just saw you there and I just wanted to say hi. I felt compelled to. So, uh, welcome everyone to the final day of the Linking Your Thinking conference. This has been 5 action-packed, idea and insight-packed days. And I think we're ending with quite the bang. We just had Bianca Pereira an hour ago. Now we have Laura Evans Hill. And here's a little bit about Laura. Laura is the founder of Nifty Fox Creative and an ex-social researcher. Laura has created atomic visuals for organizations all over the world to make the complex simple and just drive change. And atomic visuals have really helped Laura build a 6-figure business in 18 months, sell out Pencil Pirates in its first core cohort, which I hope to hear more about, and making over 30K in revenue and increasing Twitter audience by, if I'm reading this correctly, 4,500% in 90 days. All pretty remarkable. So kudos to you on just everything that you do and how you think and who you are.
Thank you very much. That's really kind of you to say. Yeah, and it's a shock to me, team, as well as it might be to you. But it's just showing up consistently and also linking your thinking in different and new and exciting and engaging, most importantly, ways. There's Eric in the chat said 30K in GBP. It's actually $40,000 now, which is about 33 grand in Great British pounds. Yeah, so 30K much. So Jenny, sorry, I'm so sorry, Nick. I'm already answering questions in the chat because people are like, what is about the money? I need to know. So that was made, that 30K was made in about 60 days.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. And that's the world we live in. That's the world we live in. These opportunities are with us. And it's kind of thinking about how to take the stuff that's in here and get them out. And I think what you're able to show us today, I'm extremely excited about, where I'm often in a text-based world, but that's not necessarily how my brain is wired. And for your session, I think you're going to be showing us how visuals can help you process your thinking, how they can help you plan your data linking, and how visuals can help present your linked thinking to others. I know there are also some visual frameworks and tools to start using atomic visuals that we might come away with. I'm very excited, but with that, Laura, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nick. And good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good day to wherever you are. You'll notice that my screen is going to change now. So you should be able to see me, and also this is my iPad screen next to me. So I was telling Nick before, I do not believe in PowerPoint because it's not the best way to display what you're thinking and to engage others. So everything we do today together will be live drawn. And I do want this to be interactive, so please do use the chat and tell me what you're thinking. Use your emoticons if you can do that. And I'm really, really excited to be here with you. So welcome to the think tank. Wherever you are in the world, you've now stepped into our beautiful, lovely, mysterious space that is the think tank. And this is where we're going to be exploring how we use atomic visuals, and I'll explain what they are in a minute, to link your thinking more effectively and also present it back to other people more effectively too. So the first step on our journey together up this mountain that we're on is, how do we actually think about visuals? So why are they so useful for linking our thinking and getting stuff done? And then the second pinnacle, the second peak that we're going to kind of traverse together is, I'm sounding incredibly British now as well, so I apologize for that. The second peak we're going to overcome together is, okay, well, now I understand why atomic visuals are so good for linking my thinking. Well, actually, how on earth do I make them? And when do I use them? When is a good time to use them in your personal knowledge management journey? And then the final peak that we'll cover together is, I'll give you a little bit of a behind the scenes of how I actually manage my visuals and actually use that within my own knowledge database. So I'm going to call this behind the scenes. So you'll be able to see the very simple and quite rudimentary way that I do that. And I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on how you manage your visuals in your own world. so that at the end of this session together, at the top of the mountain, we'll have gone on this amazing adventure. Our packs will be full of frameworks and new ways of thinking. You will feel like you can use atomic visuals to both process the way you think, to plan how you're going to link that thinking together, and also then how to present that back to other people, so that you can kind of drive change and actually persuade people to do things differently. Now, I'm doing about 15 things at once: speaking, drawing, teaching. So I'll keep an eye on the chat the best I can. But if I miss anything, I'm sure Dan and Nick will pick that up for me. So apologies that I cannot keep up with you. I've just read that I sound Canadian, but not quite. Eric, thank you so much. I am from the UK. And if any of you have seen the Netflix show Peaky Blinders, I'm from where those people are from. It's a place called Birmingham, right in the centre, about 2 hours north of London. So that hopefully solves the accent problem. Love Peaky Blinders. I'm so glad. So this is our adventure that we're going on together today. But first up, you've had a brief introduction of me from Nick. But whenever I go and see things like this, or I go to a conference, the first question I'm sat there asking is, who the bloody hell are you, and why on earth should I trust what you have to say? So I'm going to put a really cheesy picture of me on screen now, and loads of logos, to show you that I've been visual storytelling and using atomic visuals for the last 6 years. And I've won awards. I've worked with big, scary people like the government here in the UK, but also the UN, lots of universities all across the world, and also people like Public Health England, the Ministry of Justice. And just to show you that there are so many different ways of thinking that lots of different corporations and organizations are using to help drive change in their organizations. So that's my little authority bomb, if you like, to go, I sort of know what I'm talking about, and I hope you enjoy it. So that's a little bit more about me. So I mentioned that our first kind of peak that we're going to cover together is, well, why? Why should I bother using visuals when I'm thinking about my own personal knowledge management, and also when I'm thinking more generally? And there are 3 key reasons that this works super well. The first is that it helps us process our thinking in the first place. So actually, how am I thinking, and how am I getting these ideas out of my head onto paper so that I can make sense of them? The second reason is that it helps us plan better. So it helps us actually link that thinking more effectively so that we can make new connections between ideas and solve problems more effectively. And then finally, what use is thinking unless we tell other people about it? So it actually then helps us go out there and present what we mean to other people so that we can make those changes and actually implement that knowledge. So those are the 3 key reasons why. But what about the science behind it? For those of you that I haven't convinced quite yet. So for the process part, when we're using visuals, we're actually tapping into a different side of our brain to the one when we are writing or using words. So our rational side of the brain is what we're using when we're using words, which is much more linear thinking and makes it harder to think about things slightly differently. But when we pick up a pen and paper and actually draw what we're thinking, we emotionally engage with what we're doing too. And this is because the thing that processes visuals and our kind of motor skills is in the same side of our brain that emotions work. So that's a really, really simple, very rudimentary walk through neuroscience, but that's really useful to solving problems and thinking differently and creatively, because we're engaging the 2 different sides of our brain and harnessing that power effectively. So that's the science behind why it's useful for processing. For planning and also for presenting, this is my friend Ron. And Ron has been drawing stories for thousands of years. So we were verbal beings before we were ignore that. Let me start again. We were visual beings before we were verbal beings. So we were drawing on cave walls, and we were explaining what we mean and communicating our thinking through pictures before we'd even formed language. So using visuals makes sense because it's our oldest communication skill, right? So that's why it's so useful for when we're trying to process, plan, and present what we're doing. Not only that, using visuals and visual thinking is actually our brain's biggest superpower. Most of our brain's faculties are dedicated to input that is visual. In fact, neuroscientists at MIT found that this kind of advanced broccoli here, which is known as our brain, could be split in half, and over half of it, 50% of it, was dedicated solely to visual inputs. So that is the biggest superpower that our brain has. Why on earth are we not using that when we're linking our thinking together? And not only that, I'm going to give you an avalanche of science here. A later study at MIT in 2019 found that when we process our thinking or process anything in words, it takes us about 6 seconds to process a sentence of text. But the same meaning represented as a visual means that we can process the what, where, who, why, when, and how of an image in 13 milliseconds. So in terms of speed, and also the fact that we have this old superpower that we rarely tap into, means that we can process things more quickly and make new connections more effectively through using visuals. And also, what use is thinking if we don't remember it? And this is again where visuals come into their own. So there was some research done in the University of Missouri around, well, if we show people some text versus the same text as a visual, what happens to retention? How long can we remember it? And they found that 3 days later, people who saw a visual representation of the text were 22 times more likely to remember it than they were if they'd just seen the text alone. So it's about retention as well as processing, and that's so useful for when you're planning stuff and trying to present it to others too. So I can see there's loads going on in the chat now. Let me just have a look if there's anything I've missed. Just one eye. Rocketbook, remarkable tablets. I will come back to software. And Danny, yes, I will send a bibliography at the end. I will send it via email. And yes, so that is a little bit of the science of visuals and why they are so useful. But this is the next step now. How on earth do we create these atomic visuals? And what on earth am I talking about? So when I say atomic visual, what I mean is quick, simple sketches that you can do very, very quickly, that our brain can process super quickly too. So everything you see me drawing in front of you now is an atomic visual. And the rule of thumb that I always think about is this. And you'll have seen me talk about this on Twitter so much. So an atomic visual takes you less than 5 minutes to make, and your audience less than a second to process. So I'm not talking about sketch notes, which is lots and lots and lots of stuff on one page, and usually a reference to something you've seen or a conference or a podcast. And it's not a hypervisual that you might have seen Sachin Ramji do a lot of on Twitter, which is lots and lots of dense information in quite an intense, very long infographic. So these are quick, simple notes that don't have to see the light of day if you don't want them to, that are all about helping you process where you are and what you're thinking. So that is what I mean by an atomic visual. But how on earth do we make them? You've seen me draw in here, and I imagine many of you sat there and thinking, well, it sounds great in principle, but I am not creative, I can't draw, and why on earth would I use visuals when those two things are stopping me? Well, drawing and creating atomic visuals, we often think is about art, and it's about making something that is a literal representation of our thought or objects. And I want you to shift that mindset, because drawing and using atomic visuals is not about art. It's about communication. It's about helping you and other people understand what's going on in your head so that you can persuade them, engage them, change them in some way. So drawing or presenting your ideas visually is not about art. It's about making marks with meaning. So once you've taken that pressure off yourself to draw something that's beautiful, and actually all you need to do is take the most important marks and make meaning with them, drawing becomes so much easier. And there's a 3-step process to becoming an atomic visualizer. And it looks a little bit like this. So at the bottom, and we'll do this together now, at the bottom of our kind of stairway to atomic visual mastery is a bit like learning to speak, is developing our language. So together, I'm going to help you develop a visual language so that you can draw with it. And what I mean by this is, rather than drawing forms, we just need to build stuff out of shapes. So I'm going to give you the 6 key parts of your visual language so you can draw whatever is in your head. Then once we've done that, we need to learn how to speak with that language. So this is where we develop our vocabulary. So this is where we start to learn to draw stuff. So we can draw rudimentary marks. Rudimentary is my word of the day, clearly. We can draw simple marks, but how do we combine them together to draw stuff that means something? And then once we're comfortable doing that, it's how do we combine them together into metaphors or more abstract ideas so that we get to the promised land, which is then being able to draw anything and represent things quickly and simply, which is our atomic visuals. So we're going to walk through this together now so that in the next 10 to 15 minutes, you feel like you've got all the tools you need to become an atomic visual master. How are we doing in the chat? Does that sound okay? Tell me how we're doing while I grab a little drink of my huge bottle. Perfect. Awesome, all good. On the edge of my seat, I'm so pleased. Incredible. Right, let's go then, team. This is making atomic visuals together. How are we going to do it so that we can think and present that thinking back more effectively? Right, tell me in the chat, who thinks that they can't draw? Yes or no? Yes, I can draw. No, I can't draw. Who can draw? No, cannot draw. No, no. 1 yes, 2 yeses. No, bad. No, 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 no. Yes, some yeses. This is good. No, a bit, trying. Love it. Certified no. Thanks, David. Slowly. Boats only. Boats are good. Emoticons. Okay, so we've got a real mixed bag, but the majority of you said no. Well, I want you to let go of that idea and think about drawing. So this is our visual alphabet as simply a set of shapes. So can you all grab a piece of paper and a pen? Thanks, Dan. Dan's on it. And Ronnie, I love that you make a smiley and it looks nefarious. That is the most amazing way to describe an emoticon. Who uses paper? Whatever you want to draw on, your tablet screen, your iPad screen, a rocket book, whatever you need. So grab your tools. Pen and paper is fine. I would be using pen and paper if I wasn't presenting to all of you and you needed to see it. So the first step of your 6 steps to a visual alphabet, I would love you all, sorry, to draw a dot, please. Do we feel like we can draw a dot? Checking in the chat that we have some dot drawers with us. Dot, thanks, Miri. Yes, perfect. I can handle a dot. I'm so glad, Andrea. So once you've drawn our dot, let's go crazy. Let's draw 2 of those dots and join them together. Well done, folks. You are 2/6 of the way to becoming a drawing master because you've got a dot and a line. Yay, dot. I'm so glad that the dot has been given some love. So now we have our 2 dots. What about if we drew 3 dots and join them together? We have a triangle. Crazy. David, that's fine. My lines are wobbly too. As long as I can tell it's a triangle, it's a triangle. And now we've had 3 dots. Let's draw 4 dots and connect them together. So we've got a dot, a line, a triangle, and a square. What shape do we think is missing, folks? Dave, the dot has lived in the shadow of the squares for too long. So true. Long live the dot. Circle. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you. Circle. Yes. So that's a dot that meets back on itself. And the final one that somebody feel like this is a geometry class. I agree, Isaac. The final one that somebody's already mentioned in the chat, which is very awesome. Thank you, Danny, for this, is the spiral. So this is connecting our dots in a bit more of a jaunty way, like that. So the mind-blowing thing is you can draw 99.9% of things that are in your head with these 6 shapes. So you're no longer trying to be an artist or the next Picasso or Van Gogh. You are trying to build stuff that looks like something out of these shapes. And I want to show you how easy that is. So first, we need to recognize that there is a universal visual alphabet that we're all using all of the time. We're very, very visual beings. So in the chat, tell me, what is the 1%, Danny? I'll tell you later. What would you draw? And I want you to draw this along with me. If I asked you to draw love, L-O-V-E, what would you draw? Draw it and then tell me in the chat. And I'm going to give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Heart, 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 hearts, hearts. So some of you said puppies, which I love, and I agree. Heart. Okay, so we all have a universal visual language for what love means. The second thing I want you to draw is Christmas. So Christmas, Santa Claus, Christmas. What would you draw? Tell me in the chat. Tree, 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 star, socks, very true. Tree, 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 tree. Gifts, absolutely. So most of you have said that they would draw a tree, and we'll occasionally get presents and holly. So again, universal visual language for one thing. Now, what you need to do when you're drawing your own atomic visuals is tap into this innate knowledge of symbolism and draw the things that first come to mind. When we're drawing atomic visuals, we're not drawing perfection. We're about what is the quickest link that I can get from my thought to this image on paper. So together, let's play some Pirate Pictionary. So this is where we're going to take some words and see if we can represent them together. But remember, you're using your visual alphabet to do so. And one quick tip before we do this, because this is always the bit where I blow your minds, is that your visual alphabet is your friends. So you can draw things like people, for example. Instead of drawing people like this, because how many of us only have a joint in the middle of their body and move like this? Use a visual alphabet. So instead, draw your people with a brick for a body instead, and legs and arms. And this brick person becomes much, much, much easier to manipulate and turn into stuff. So you're using your visual alphabet to draw things that you see around you, and then actually people are the hardest thing. So all we need to do with people is change the way that this shape orients and the way that our legs move to give them some personality, to show that they're doing something. So here is my running person. You can also change that shape. So that might be a person who is a circle and is feeling a little bit lost. And you can also show the direction of that person by adding a nose. So that is a really, really quick visual alphabet representation of people, because I always find that's the hardest thing to draw. So here's a quick hack. And if you want to make it look more feminine, just before I move us on, you can just add a few of your little spirals spiraled out to show long hair, or add a bun on the back. So let's play some Pirate Pictionary. I'm going to grab a random word generator on my phone. Let's see if I can find it. And then I want you to spend 15 seconds drawing what this word is. And then tell me in the chat what it is. I'll do this along with you. So we're not, I wouldn't ask you to do something I wouldn't do myself. So, ready, team? Loving it. Fabulous. I'm glad to see him. So the first word that's come up on my random generator is, can you draw escape for me? Draw escape. Dan, Nick, could you time us 15 seconds and tell me when that's up? Because I need to do this along with them.
Will do.
Ready. So we're all going to draw escape together, folks. Ready? Timing starting. You tell us, you count us in. Count us in, Nick. Okay, Nick's gone. Nick, you're on mute, but I think I lip read correctly. So we're drawing escape together. So I'm going to talk you through what I'm doing while I'm doing it with you. I'm using the visual alphabet again. So I'm drawing a door that's open, and then I'm going to draw a little person that is coming out of the door.
Time.
Like that. There we go. That is my escape. What did we all draw? Floor trap with an arrow out, 2 rectangles, 1 big with a small one on the top right. Keyboard metaphor. Oh, I love it. Hitting the link, yeah. Jail cell, a door, a ladder, stick figure running with a dash behind him. Absolutely. This is incredible. So you've all represented this in totally different ways, but that represent that abstract word that is escape. So I did this to prove to you that you already have all the visual vocabulary you need because you're looking at it every day. It's just you needed the tools to take it from your brain into your hands and onto paper. Thanks, Nick, for the 15 seconds. So I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move us on from our pirate Pictionary. But congratulations, you've just learned the 6 shapes you need to draw anything. And now you can use that to draw stuff around you. So the key to being good at linking your thinking and using atomic visuals is practicing with those shapes and continuing to do it and then starting to use those ideas. But the tough bit now is, okay, Laura, I get it. I've got some shapes. I draw stuff out of shapes. Cool. I can probably draw a dinosaur and something like a beer glass. But how do I actually represent really gnarly abstract ideas? How do I go from my words and turn it into a visual? Well, imagine the process of creating an atomic visual a bit like this funnel. You might start with words, because for lots of us, that is how we've been taught to think in education. That is how we write everything down in our Notion or Obsidian or on our Notes app. But actually, using visuals will help you organize it more effectively and then take that stuff and make more sense of it in your own head, which means you can connect it more effectively. So take all of those words. Say you've got 3,000 words that you've written down. What I then like to do is go through and highlight the most important ones. And how do you tell which are the most important? The ones that you repeat, the sentences you use to conclude stuff, and the ones where you've bolded something. That's the most important stuff. It's not more complicated than that. So what are the things that you're repeating, the things that you're concluding with, and the stuff you're putting in bold? They're the most important words. And then once I've got those most important words, I simplify it again to where I've just got one word for each concept. And then all I have to do as a visualizer is take that one word and find a visual that matches it. So this is then going through your visual vocabulary that you already have and going, here's the image that I need. It might be a fox jumping over a bridge or a bin with loads of tweets hanging out of it. So that's the process of going from all of those words into a visual. And if you get stuck, Google icon search is your friend. So all you need to do is head to the Google search engine and add in the word that you're trying to represent and the word icon after it. And then you can use your visual alphabet to recreate an icon in your own style that will help represent that word. And that is where the atomic visual comes from. And the atomic visual bit, so the bit where we're collecting it together, comes from then taking all of those words. So taking these 3,000 words and then splitting them into 3 separate images that you might then combine together. So you'll notice that in all of the things I've drawn in front of you, my atomic visuals never contain more than 3 points, really. So that's what you're looking for. How can I condense all of this thinking into one succinct visual? But how do you organize your ideas? How can you get more advanced with this? So let's say you've summarized a page of your notes, but your notes then have to link together, right? You need to be able to link your thinking. Well, this is where our content buckets come in. For those of you that have done Ship 30, Dickie and Cole, who run that course, talk about content buckets for your writing. And the same applies for content buckets for your visuals and also your ideas and thinking. And the majority of our thinking can be represented or put into the buckets of these 3 ideas. Most of our thinking is about the passage of time. So how do we get from here to here? The other thing that most of our thinking is about is relationships. So how does this one thing linked to this other thing, or it's about difference. So how this thing is not this thing and that don't work together. And our thinking can be channeled into these three buckets. And why do we need to channel them into these three buckets? Well, so that we can combine them together and link them together in visual ways. And one of the most powerful ways to link things together is by using metaphors. So this is where we take a known idea or a known concept, like Harry Potter houses, for example, and map them onto the unknown, like the political factions in America, for example. Really random selection there, folks, don't quote me on it. But it's how can I take something that I know or that my audience know a lot about and make new connections between those ideas, which is the definition of creativity, by mapping it onto something that I don't know to make more sense of it. And these three buckets have lots of different metaphors that sit within each of them to help make sense of stuff. So there are loads out there, and I also have 34 visual frameworks on my pinned tweet on Twitter. Dan, could you post that in the chat for me, please? That will help you do this really, really easily. But I'm going to go through the 9 most useful ones with you now. So the time bucket we can represent with these visual metaphors here. So demonstrating the journey of a process, and you can go away and copy these images and slot your visuals or slot your individual words into parts of this image to represent what you need. So there's the journey for a process of climbing over a mountain. You've seen me use one already at the very beginning of this session. There's a map. So here's how we go from here to here to here to here to get a hole. And then the mountain. The only problem with memes, I'm just looking at this in the chat. Oh, atomic memes. I'll come back to that. And the other one is a mountain. You've seen me do this at the beginning. So that shows how this bit links to this bit, links to this bit in chronological order. But what about if we're looking at relationships? Again, you've seen me do this already today. So bricks. How do things stack together to get to an end result or to combine to make something? Bricks. What about things that congregate around a key point? So my academics out there, this is beautiful for when you're trying to link thinking around an argument. So your central bud is the key idea or the key part of that argument, and your petals are all of the things that link in to reinforce that point. What about when you're trying to link lots of different people and places together or concepts together? Another really good one is to use the metaphor of space. So drawing in the middle, your sun or your Jupiter, and then showing how these things relate to that central idea or central person or process, with those that are closer being more important and those that are further apart being less important. And you can play with size too to show hierarchy. And ye olde favorite of all marketing and business presentation bods everywhere is the engine, cogs. How do things work together to make a process move forward? So that's really good metaphors for relationships. And finally, what about difference? What about when things are in conflict or there's a problem? Well, lots of us have seen the iceberg. The poor iceberg gets a lot of slack, but that shows what we can see about a problem and what we don't know or can't see. So that's really useful for linking things when you talk about problems or conflict. And finally, we have the tree to show how these parts of the root are different from the trunk, different from the tree leaves, and different from the branches, but somehow work together to make an end result. So that's a real crash course in visual metaphors, and Dan has very kindly posted the link to my 34 visual frameworks there. But these will help you take all of those individual atomic visuals and combine them into something that links your thinking in a new way, that will help you process them. It will help you plan how you move them around in your personal knowledge management system, but it will also help you to present that back to audiences so it makes sense to them too. So it's about how you share your thinking as well as how you connect it. If all of this feels great, but you're still terrified of drawing and think, oh my gosh, this is super, super hard, do what we've been doing for thousands of years. Steal like an artist. Go and find copyright free Creative Commons images online and use those as your representations. And be a pirate. Absolutely agree, Levi. So Dan, could you post the bit.ly link in the chat for me, please? If you head to this link that will appear in the chat now, this will link you through to my company Nifty Fox's free visual database of all things visual. So it will link you to illustrations, icons, poster templates, presentation templates, animation templates, anything you can get your hands on for free to help you build your atomic visuals in any way that works for you, because not all of us want to use a pen and paper, but that is worth checking out there to help you move forward. And yay for Austin Kleon, absolutely great, totally. His books are incredible. So steal like an artist, as Austin says, and go to that link and you'll see lots of copyright-free images to help you. But I promised you the final thing I would touch on before I open for questions is, okay, Laura, love it. I get why visuals work. I'm into atomic visuals. I want to see how I can use them to process my own thinking. But how on earth do you manage all these visuals that you then create? How do you embed them into the systems that you use? Well, I'm going to let you into a little bit of a secret, which is my personal knowledge management is pretty shit, but I've got a really basic system that works. So for me, for all of my work stuff and all of those brain dumps, I'll draw something in Procreate, which is what I'm using now, and then I will dump it into Notion. And here's what that process looks like. So if I'm drawing in Procreate, so if I'm drawing digitally, which is what I'm using now, I'll save the image as a JPEG. If I'm drawing in pen and paper, I use an app called Adobe Capture, which means that I take a picture of it with my phone, it turns it into black and white and turns it into a PNG that I can then drop into whatever digital thing that I want. So once I've either done it digitally or in an analog form, the digital way, I then use folder stacks on Procreate to link all of that together. So all of my teaching sits in here, all of my Pencil Pirate stuff sits in here, and whenever I do any live illustration for events or conferences, it sits in here. So that's the first place where I begin to manage it. But the issue with Procreate is it's not very circular. It's really hard to link things together. So once I've organized it in there, I'll save it as that JPEG, as I said, and then dump it into my Notion database, which is very basic, and you'll all shout at me for not organizing it correctly. But this is where I put most of my content ideas for Twitter. So I'll put them into their own page and I'll dump it in there. And there's lots and lots of different ways to do this. And that's how I tend to do it. And that is it. That is how I manage all of my visuals. As I said, simplicity works for me. I can get everything in less than 10 seconds. And also because I'm an Apple whore, it means that all of my images sync across my watch, my phone, and also my iPad and my Mac. So that's really useful. I use albums on my photos, iCloud photos, to also filter through stuff too. But a really awesome tweet that came through this week from Zolt, he went through how he uses Excalidraw, which is a drawing app on the internet, online, as we say now in the modern world. And he went through a whole YouTube tutorial of how he sets up his Obsidian with things that he's drawn in Excalidraw. And Brian, I did say Apple whore. Yeah, we're all bought in iPhone, Apple. I'm not wearing my Apple Watch today because I've lost my charger, which is terrifying. But Zolt's done an incredible YouTube video there, so please do check out what he's done. More of an expert than I am, and that's kind of really worth checking out for you. So a few little resources I'm going to leave you with before I bring it all together and open for questions. These are three that I highly recommend. You've already seen the bit.ly link to our free database. But if you're ever struggling to know how to draw something, head to Quick Draw by Google, which has a library of over 3 million icons that they asked, I think, almost 500,000 people to draw, of different ways to draw stuff. And you will see a GIF of how somebody's drawn a butterfly, for example. So it's a really good place to go. Another really good one, you've heard me mention it already, is Excalidraw. So drawing your own stuff online that you can then export in different file types to put into your PKM systems. And also one I've just thought of on the spot is if you head to, oh no, there we go, I've remembered it, a website called Drawify, that is a really good place to get visual metaphors drawn for you for either a very, very low cost or free. I think there's a free tier. So this is where you say, I've got this idea, please help me. I don't know how to represent it. And they will send it to their pool of visual artists, and it will come back with a visual metaphor to represent it. So if you're feeling super, super lazy, go and get somebody else to do it on Drawify. So let's remind ourselves of the journey that we've been on today. Here's our mountain. Here we are, looking fabulous at the bottom. So at the bottom of our mountain, we have our why. Why are atomic visuals so useful? Well, because all the science helps us process them quickly and helps us process our thinking differently. It helps us to plan our thinking because of all of that visual superpower of speed and retention, and helps us present them because we're helping engage our brain in two different ways. The second peak that we've covered is, okay, great, how on earth do we create them? Well, we went through the visual alphabet of how to draw, how to develop your visual vocabulary, and then how can we take that and turn it into metaphors by using those, the time, relationship, and difference buckets. And I've given you a very brief, and I'm very ashamed of my very simple PKM system, but I've gone through some of the behind the scenes stuff so that hopefully now you feel like you've got the building blocks and the starting blocks to go and start to use atomic visuals to link your thinking together. So that's everything from me so far. I'm going to go through the chat now and also the Q&A and go through some of those questions. But before you all disappear, if you want to get hold of me, here is where you can come find me. So if you want to send me an email, if email is your bag, come get me at laura@niftyfoxcreative.com. If you prefer Twitter, you can find my business at Nifty Fox Creative, or me personally, where I'm probably more active, at Evans Nifty. And if you're interested more in finding about free resources, more learning around this, head to the blog section of niftyfoxcreative.com, or come and see what we're doing over at pencilpirates.com, which is a cohort-based e-course where we teach people just like you how to visualize their ideas in under 5 minutes so that audiences get them in less than a second. Our May cohort has just started, but we're now taking on bookings, is that the right word? Bookings for our August cohort, where you'll meet people from all around the world. There's over 200 pirates now, and I really hope to see you there. But that's enough of me rambling on, and I'm really excited to take some questions. So Nick, Dan, fire away. Tell me who I'm talking to.
Yeah, well, first, Laura, I think you blew the socks off a lot of different people. So this is really fantastic. I have to change my socks after this too, because they're across the room. This is just fantastic. So before we jump into the Q&A, something that we've been doing to show appreciation for every presenter is to share our takeaways in the chat. Some things that we're taking away, actually typing it out ourselves. So takeaways beat claps, and we want to kind of see some of these takeaways. I think we're going to see a mountain of really, really excited takeaways here.
Oh, wow.
There they come. 22x, more likely to retain images. Drawing visuals is not about making art. Love the metaphors, the funnel, steal like an artist, easy, quick draw, iconify thoughts. Many of us can draw, and if we can't, there's cool stuff. Plenty, and it's still coming in.
That's incredible. There's one here that's really stuck with me. It's, let's change how we educate children, and I can't stress that enough. The education system teaches us that drawing is for relaxation, or is kind of a lesser endeavor than academic words, and actually knowledge is on a spectrum, and all parts of that spectrum are valid, and actually visual communication is so important, yet we just do not teach it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. These are wonderful. So we're going to make sure that to keep the chat. And what we're doing is compiling all presentations. They'll be available, if we're lucky, tomorrow, Saturday. Dan is doing some magical things in the background, so we can kind of have a great experience as people watch this if they can't attend live. With that, though, I think we can jump over to the questions. And here's one from Jenny. I haven't read this yet, so it's got a lot of upvotes. Using visuals when you have no graphic or art skills, any advice? Someone wrote, following on this, hire an illustrator or brave the lure. You know what? That was before your presentation. I kind of think that's what you went over. Yeah. So that was at the very start of our call.
I mean, just to jump in really quickly, I'm a trained sociologist. I'm not an artist. I've had to learn how to draw like this. And my drawing isn't perfect, but I can communicate complexity very quickly, very simply. So you all have the tools now to become a visual communicator, and it's not about being an illustrator or even perfect. It's about making marks with meaning, right? So I would encourage you to try it yourself first, because only you know what's going in your head, and that's the best way to try and get it out on paper. But yeah, I'm an academic by trade. I'm not an artist. So and now I have a visual storytelling company. So it definitely just depends on practice and learning to think in a different way.
Very nice. From Isaac, we have, how do you search your past visual notes?
Isaac, I wish I had a really witty, intelligent, knowledgeable answer to this. But if I'm honest, I go, shit, when did I draw that thing? And then search manually through my stuff. I'm very new to Notion, but usually it's by date. So I tend to remember when I've drawn something because that's how I link my thinking in my head. But yeah, that's the honest answer. What I'd love to say is, like, I add tags to everything. There's a date on it. It's all related by topic, but I'm not that good in Notion to do that yet. But that's how I'd like to be able to search it. So there's the very brutally honest answer.
Wonderful, wonderful. How did you present today? We know you use iPad, Procreate. What was that? What was that setup like? Are there any intangibles or tangibles you'd like to share?
Oh, of course, yeah, I'm more than happy to share how I do it. So what you can see here, so with all of the fancy email bits and stuff, this is a piece of software called OBS. It's free to download. Lots of Twitch streamers use it. My wife's really into gaming, so I saw her watching people on Twitch thinking, how can I use what they're doing for teaching? So this is OBS. You can download it for free. And then all I've done is share my iPad screen. So this is an iPad 12.9 inch. I use Pro. And I've got a piece of software on here called Procreate, which is about 10 quid on the App Store, and that's 10 quid for life. And it's an incredible drawing app. So if I turn off my project canvas and show you what this looks like behind the scenes, it looks a bit like this. So this is kind of a drawing app, and then you'll see all of my slides, if you like, are pre-drawn on layers here. So I've got elements of them drawn already, and then all I have to do is turn off the layers and turn them on again to then draw over them, a bit like this. So that's how I'm drawing. And then if I turn my project canvas back on, it will look a bit weird for a minute. And then this is then ported in as a screen share into OBS. So OBS helps you build scenes. So you can add, my cameras in here. You can add different camera views. I can change, how I present this to you. But yeah, OBS, first thing, Procreate on iPad. And then I use a piece of software called Air Server to get my iPad screen as a window on my Mac. That's about 20 quid for the year. And then that's ported in as a scene in OBS. It sounds super complicated, but honestly, it really isn't. And if you become a pencil pirate, I walk you through how to set that up for yourself. But there's a curiosity driver for you. Come learn how to do it in Pencil Pirates.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty compelling what you presented and how you did it. So I think we have time for maybe just a couple more, and then we'll get into the final run. So Jenny, okay, let's see. Okay, that one's done. Going to the next one. How do I combine the hand-drawn notes so that I find ideas? Okay, I think you answered that one live.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Adobe Capture, by the way, that's how I do it.
Adobe Capture. And are you using your phone Adobe Capture for that, or is it the
absolutely.
iPad?
So
okay.
It's iPhone app. I usually draw on Post-it notes. In fact, I've just thrown a load away, but my desk is covered in Post-it notes, usually with crazy little drawings on. So I tend to just snap them with my phone and then port that into Notion or even directly into Procreate if I want to draw over it.
What sort of social research did you do?
Oh, what a lovely question. I don't get asked about my previous life. So I did my postgrad stuff in LGBT experiences of public health here in the UK. And then because I needed a job because I fell in love, and being in love costs money, I then changed my research topic to widening participation. So what that means is, how do we get people from underserved and underrepresented groups into university education? And that came with research, but it also came with a lot of actual impact work. So running outreach schemes, understanding all of the barriers and drivers to people from those groups getting into uni, and also helping them stay in uni when they were there. So that's kind of where my research background is.
Wow, very cool. Very
Thank
cool
you.
with that.
Yes, I never get asked, so that's lovely. Thanks,
Was
Danny.
asked by, yeah, Denny asked some good questions. Okay, so and are you, so just to clarify with the iPad, are you drawing live? Like you have sort of you have something there that can support it. You can turn off that layer and then you just draw on top of the base layer.
Yeah,
That's so
everything
cool.
you've seen has either been drawn for me this afternoon when I was planning, or live in front of you. And the way that I can do it so speedily is that I limit myself. So creativity breeds with constraints, right? So I use the same pen, I use 3 colors, and I have the same style across everything, and that just limits all of the other decisions that I have to make. So that's everything you're seeing is done live, unless there are little bits that I pre-draw, mainly so I remember what I'm saying.
Wonderful. You know, I'm looking at these questions and you have answered so many. Any recommendations of tools for those who are not very talented? And you've provided a trove. That link, that resource, the URL was Padlet. That one, it's like, I'm just scrolling through that and I think, wow, there's so many wonderful resources out there right now.
Absolutely. There's so much free stuff out there to help you, that even if you feel like pen and paper or iPad and pencil or Android app and Artflow, by the way, Artflow is the Android equivalent to Procreate, by the way, if you want to try that. You can build it in a different way. It doesn't have to be from your fair hand. It can be wherever you can find that inspiration from.
You know, some of your brain study references, do you have those handy, or are there ways that
Yeah, so I can, if you look on Nifty Fox Creative's Twitter feed, 3 of them are linked there already with the link, because we've done a kind of a thing this week where we're going through the research. And if people are interested, I can send all of we call it our visual storytelling rationale at Nifty Fox. I can send you all the references. I'll email it over to you, Nick, probably not immediately after this call because I need to eat, but probably tomorrow. With all of those references and the links to MIT, and there's a neuroscientist called DeLupa who I talked about, so you can make sure that I'm telling the truth, and I'll email that over to you tomorrow.
Okay, that would be wonderful. You don't have to, but that would be wonderful
No,
if you pick up the time.
As a researcher, my toes would curl if I didn't, so that's totally fair. And I do need to call my dad, everybody. Yeah, I do.
All right, so let's wrap this one up then. So now we can give some applause in the chat. Just Laura, thank you so much for your time. You knocked it out of the park and gave us a lot to think about and to actually incorporate into how we link our thinking and how we make the magic happen.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute blast, and you've all been so welcoming, so thank you so much. And if you feel like your question wasn't answered today, please come find me at evansnifty on Twitter. I'm sure I'll be hanging out on there after I've called my dad and after I've had some spaghetti bolognese, so more than happy to answer any questions that you have over there.
Okay, just wonderful. All right, everyone, let's say goodbye to Laura, and until next time, stay connected. I'll have some music outro for everyone, and then I'll be back giving a sense-making session to close out the Linking Your Thinking conference in 3 hours. So hope to see you there, and all the best until then. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.